The clash of steel echoes through time, carrying whispers of battles fought with weapons that simply shouldn't exist. Imagine blades so sharp they could slice through armor like parchment, or fire that burned on water, defying every law of nature. Across ancient battlefields, warriors wielded artifacts of such terrifying power and precision that historians still struggle to explain their origins. Today we uncover 20 of history's most impossible weapons relics, so advanced they seem ripped from the pages of science fiction, yet they were real. Viking swords forged with metal purer than modern steel, Byzantine flamethrowers that could melt ships, and Aztec obsidian blades sharp enough to decapitate a horse with a single swing. These weren't just tools of war, they were technological marvels centuries ahead of their time, their secrets now lost to history. Join us as we unravel the mysteries behind these extraordinary artifacts, piece together the fragments of forgotten knowledge, and ask the most baffling question of all: how did ancient civilizations create weapons that modern science still can't fully replicate? The answers might rewrite everything we thought we knew about our ancestors' capabilities. Prepare to witness the impossible. Now let's step into the world of the Vikings, where one weapon stands out as a true enigma: the Ulfberht sword. Crafted between the 9th and 11th centuries, these blades weren't just tools of war, they were masterpieces of metallurgy that defied the technological limits of their era. What made them so extraordinary? Unlike the typical swords of the time, which were forged from brittle, impure iron, the Ulfberht swords were made from crucible steel, a material so refined it rivals modern high-carbon steel. The secret lay in their purity. While most European swords contained slag and inconsistencies that made them prone to shattering, Ulfberht blades were nearly flawless, with a carbon content 3 times higher than their contemporaries. This gave them unmatched strength and flexibility, allowing warriors to strike with devastating force without fear of the blade snapping. Tests on surviving Ulfberht swords show they could bend at extreme angles and still return to true, a feat no other medieval weapon could match. But here's the puzzle: crucible steel of this quality shouldn't have existed in Europe at the time. The process required to create it, melting iron at incredibly high temperatures to remove impurities, wasn't mastered in the West until the Industrial Revolution, nearly 800 years later. So how did Viking smiths achieve this? The answer might lie in distant lands. Archaeological evidence suggests these swords weren't entirely a Viking invention. Similar crucible steel was being produced in Persia and Central Asia during the same period, leading historians to speculate that the raw material, or even the knowledge of its forging, was imported via trade routes like the Volga. Some Ulfberht blades bear inscriptions in Latin, hinting at a connection to Frankish workshops, while others have markings that trace back to the Middle East. Could these swords be the product of a global exchange of knowledge, lost to time? Over 170 Ulfberht swords have been discovered across Europe, but their rarity suggests they were reserved for elite warriors, perhaps kings or chieftains who could afford such marvels. Today, modern blacksmiths struggle to replicate their perfection, a humbling reminder of how advanced ancient craftsmanship truly was. The Ulfberht swords aren't just weapons, they're a window into a forgotten world of innovation where the line between myth and reality blurs. Next, we journey from the frozen north to the blazing seas of Byzantium, where another impossible weapon turned the tide of war: Greek fire. A substance so terrifying it burned even on water, and its secrets died with the empire that created it. But how did this ancient flamethrower work, and why has no one been able to recreate it? That's a mystery we'll ignite in the next chapter. Now we turn from the icy craftsmanship of Viking swords to the blazing terror of Byzantine warfare, a Greek fire, the ancient world's most feared naval weapon. Picture this: enemy ships closing in on Constantinople, only to be met with jets of liquid flame that clung to wood and water alike, turning the sea itself into an inferno. This wasn't just fire, it was a technological nightmare, one that defied every conventional tactic of its time. Greek fire's effectiveness was legendary. Byzantine records describe it as a liquid thunderbolt capable of igniting entire fleets in moments. Unlike ordinary flames, it couldn't be doused with water. Some accounts even suggest it burned fiercer when wet. The Byzantines deployed it through pressurized tubes mounted on their ships, spraying it like a medieval flamethrower. Historical texts recount how the mere sight of these devices sent enemy crews into panic, with some sailors leaping overboard to escape the unstoppable blaze. But what made Greek fire so unique? Its exact recipe remains one of history's best-kept secrets. The Byzantines guarded its composition with such paranoia that only a handful of artisans and emperors ever knew the full formula. When Constantinople fell in the 15th century, the knowledge vanished with them. Modern chemists and historians have pieced together clues from fragmentary accounts, leading to competing theories. One prominent ingredient was likely naphtha, a crude form of petroleum distilled from natural oil seeps in the Middle East. Mixed with resins or pitch, it would create a sticky, long-burning fuel. Other theories point to quicklime, a substance that reacts violently with water, potentially explaining why the fire seemed to intensify on contact with waves. Some even speculate about secret additives like sulfur or saltpeter, which could have made the mixture more explosive. The delivery system was equally ingenious. Byzantine ships used bronze siphons, possibly heated to keep the mixture fluid before ignition. Operators pumped bellows to project the stream, with some accounts mentioning a roar as the fire erupted, a detail that hints at pressurized technology centuries ahead of its time. Yet for all its power, Greek fire had limits. It was notoriously unstable, with historical records noting accidental explosions that destroyed Byzantine vessels alongside their targets. Its range was also limited, requiring ships to get dangerously close, a vulnerability enemies exploited by attacking with long-range archers or faster, more maneuverable boats. The legacy of Greek fire endures not just in its mystery, but in its psychological impact. For 7 centuries, it was the ultimate deterrent, shielding Byzantium from invaders and reshaping naval warfare. Even today, its specter lingers, a reminder of how innovation, when paired with secrecy, can become the stuff of legend. Next, we travel to the forges of the Middle East, where another impossible weapon emerged: Damascus Steel, a metal so sharp and resilient it seemed forged by the gods themselves. How did blades crafted 1,000 years ago outperform modern replicas? That's a mystery cut deep into history. Stepping from the liquid flames of Byzantium into the smoldering forges of the Middle East, we encounter a weapon so masterfully crafted that its secrets still elude modern metallurgists: Damascus Steel. These legendary blades, named after the Syrian trading hub where many were sold, were not just tools of war but works of art, combining beauty and lethality in ways that defy logic. Imagine a sword so sharp it could slice through a silk scarf as it fell through the air, yet so durable it could shatter lesser blades on impact. This wasn't mere craftsmanship, it was alchemy disguised as blacksmithing. The most striking feature of Damascus Steel is its signature wavy surface pattern, resembling flowing water or cascading ripples. Far from just decorative, these patterns were a visual fingerprint of the blade's unmatched strength. The secret lay in the steel itself, forged from Wootz ingots, a rare form of high-carbon steel imported from India and Sri Lanka. Ancient smiths heated and hammered these ingots at precise temperatures, folding the metal countless times to distribute carbon unevenly. This created micro-layers of hard and soft steel, granting the blades both flexibility and a razor's edge. But the true genius was in the cooling process. Historical accounts suggest smiths quenched the blades in mysterious liquids, possibly acidic solutions or organic materials like urine, which etched the distinctive patterns into the metal. The result, swords that could reportedly cleave through European broadswords without dulling, leaving their owners in awe. Crusaders who faced these blades in battle brought back tales of their supernatural sharpness, with some even claiming they could split rocks. Yet by the 18th century, the art of forging true Damascus steel vanished. The reasons remain debated. Some blame the depletion of Hwacha's ore mines in India, while others point to the disruption of trade routes or the dying out of master smiths who took their techniques to the grave. Whatever the cause, attempts to recreate the metal failed for centuries. Even Industrial Revolution-era metallurgists, armed with advanced tools, produced imitations that lacked the original's legendary properties. Modern science has peeled back some of the mystery. Electron microscopy reveals that authentic Damascus blades contain carbon nanotubes, microscopic structures that strengthen the metal at a molecular level. These nanotubes likely formed accidentally due to trace elements like vanadium in the Hwacha's ore, combined with the unique forging process. Today, craftsmen using powdered metallurgy and precise temperature controls have come close to replicating the patterns, but the exact recipe of the ancients remains just out of reach. The allure of Damascus steel isn't just in its lost technology, but in what it represents: a fleeting intersection of art, science, and sheer human ingenuity. These weren't just weapons, they were heirlooms passed down through generations, their edges never faltering. As we continue our journey, we'll see how another ancient civilization pushed the boundaries of innovation, not with fire or steel, but with sheer mechanical brilliance. The Chinese repeating crossbow, a weapon so advanced it feels out of place in the ancient world, awaits. Leaving behind the enigmatic glow of Damascus steel, we arrive at a weapon that shattered expectations of ancient warfare with pure mechanical ingenuity. The Chinese repeating crossbow, or Chu-Ko-Nu, wasn't just ahead of its time. It redefined the very concept of ranged combat. Picture a handheld device capable of launching 10 bolts in 15 seconds, a feat unmatched until the invention of modern firearms. This wasn't merely innovation, it was a revolution crammed into a wooden frame. The genius of the Chu-Ko-Nu lay in its simplicity. Unlike European crossbows that required painstaking reloading after each shot, this Chinese marvel operated like a prehistoric machine gun. A rectangular magazine sat atop the weapon, gravity-fed with bolts. Pulling the lever backward drew the string, loaded a bolt, and released it in one fluid motion. No winding, no pauses, just relentless volleys. Historical records suggest some versions could fire up to 50 bolts per minute, a rate that would leave opposing armies stunned. But why did such a groundbreaking design emerge in China centuries before similar concepts appeared elsewhere? The answer lies in the chaos of the Warring States period, where massed infantry battles demanded rapid, high-volume firepower. The Chu-Ko-Nu delivered exactly that. Armies equipped with these weapons could unleash hailstorms of bolts to suppress enemy charges or defend city walls. Its compact size allowed even conscripted farmers to wield it effectively with minimal training, a democratization of killing power unheard of in contemporary Europe. Comparing it to medieval European crossbows reveals stark contrasts. While European designs prioritized single-shot power for piercing armor, sometimes taking a full minute to reload, the Chu-Ko-Nu sacrificed individual bolt strength for overwhelming quantity. Tests show its bolts lacked the penetrating force to pierce plate armor, but against unarmored troops or horses, the psychological impact was devastating. Imagine facing a line of soldiers unleashing continuous fire without reloading, a nightmare scenario for any advancing force, yet the weapon had Achilles' heels. Its short range, about 70 yards maximum, and reliance on gravity-fed mechanisms made it vulnerable in open battles. Moisture could swell the wooden magazine, jamming bolts, while prolonged use wore down the hemp bowstring. These limitations confined its dominance primarily to defensive positions and ambush tactics. Perhaps most intriguing is how the Chu-Ko-Nu's legacy echoes through history. While Europeans were still perfecting single-shot crossbows in the 1400s, Chinese inventors had already explored concepts like interchangeable magazines and burst fire, ideas that wouldn't resurface until the 19th century. Some scholars argue this weapon represents a road not taken in military technology, where rapid-fire mechanisms overshadowed brute force centuries earlier than the West. As we marvel at this ancient precursor to automatic weapons, we're reminded that innovation often blooms under pressure. The Chu-Ko-Nu wasn't just a tool of war. It was a glimpse into an alternate timeline of warfare, one where speed triumphed over strength long before gunpowder changed everything. And now we turn our gaze to another civilization that weaponized nature's fury in ways that defied European expectations: the Aztecs and their obsidian-studded terror, the Macuahuitl. Stepping away from the mechanical genius of the Chu-Ko-Nu, we find ourselves face to face with a weapon that turned nature's fury into a tool of war. The Aztec Macuahuitl wasn't just a sword, it was a wooden nightmare lined with razor-sharp obsidian blades, capable of slicing through flesh and bone with terrifying ease. Imagine a paddle-shaped club as tall as a man, its edges studded with volcanic glass sharper than modern surgical steel. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a symbol of Mesoamerican ingenuity, blending raw materials with brutal craftsmanship. The Macuahuitl's deadliness lay in its design. Unlike European swords that relied on metal, Aztec warriors harnessed the natural properties of obsidian, a volcanic glass that could be fractured into edges just a few molecules thick. These blades, meticulously embedded in grooves along the weapon's wooden frame, created a saw-like effect that could cleave through muscle and tendon with horrifying precision. Spanish accounts describe its ability to decapitate horses in a single swing, a feat that left even armored conquistadors shaken. One chronicler wrote of seeing a warrior strike a horse's head clean off, the obsidian blade slicing, as if through butter. But wielding the Macuahuitl required more than brute strength. It demanded skill, balance, and a deep understanding of its unique mechanics. Unlike heavy European broadswords designed for hacking, the Macuahuitl was surprisingly lightweight, allowing for swift, fluid strikes. Warriors trained for years to master its use, learning to exploit its slashing potential while avoiding the fragility of its obsidian teeth. A mistimed block or awkward swing could shatter the blades, leaving the fighter vulnerable. This wasn't a weapon for amateurs, it was the tool of elite warriors, the jaguars and eagles of Aztec society. The Spanish, despite their steel armor, quickly learned to fear the Macuahuitl. While their metal plates could deflect arrows and sword thrusts, the obsidian blades had a gruesome advantage. They shattered on impact, sending microscopic shards deep into wounds. Even superficial cuts could become infected with volcanic glass fragments, leading to agonizing deaths. Conquistador Bernal Diaz del Castillo recounted how a single Macuahuitl strike could cripple a man, leaving him gushing blood from a dozen wounds at once. What made this weapon even more remarkable was its symbolic duality. In Aztec culture, obsidian held spiritual significance. It was the sacred blood of the earth, linked to the god Tezcatlipoca. The Macuahuitl wasn't just a tool of war, it was a ceremonial object, a conduit between the warrior and the divine. Victories with this weapon were offerings to the gods, its obsidian teeth mirroring the sacrificial knives used in temples. Yet for all its lethality, the Macuahuitl had limits. Obsidian, while sharp, was brittle. Prolonged combat could reduce it to a splintered husk, forcing warriors to carry spares. Unlike steel, it couldn't hold an edge indefinitely, and resharpening required skilled artisans. When faced with European swords in prolonged duels, the Macuahuitl's weaknesses became apparent. But in the initial shock of battle, its psychological and physical impact was unmatched. The Macuahuitl forces us to rethink assumptions about primitive warfare. Here was a civilization that, without metallurgy, engineered a weapon so devastating it rattled invaders armed with centuries of European military technology. It wasn't just a relic of the past, it was proof that innovation takes many forms. And as we leave the jungles of Mesoamerica, our next stop takes us to an artifact that defies even modern science, the Iron Pillar of Delhi, a 1600-year-old marvel that never rusts. From the brutal elegance of the Macuahuitl, we journey now to a silent sentinel of ancient science, the Iron Pillar of Delhi. This towering column of metal stands as one of history's most perplexing anomalies. Forged over 1,600 years ago, it defies the very laws of nature by refusing to rust, a feat modern metallurgy still struggles to fully explain. Rising 23 feet above Delhi's Qutub complex, the pillar bears inscriptions honoring the Gupta Empire's King Chandragupta II. But its real marvel lies not in its history but in its composition. Unlike typical iron, which succumbs to corrosion within decades, this pillar has withstood monsoons, pollution, and centuries of exposure without a single flake of rust. Scientists have analyzed its surface and discovered an extraordinary protective layer, a thin film of crystalline iron hydrogen phosphate. This natural shield forms through a rare chemical reaction between the iron's high phosphorus content and environmental elements, effectively making it self-healing. What baffles researchers isn't just its resistance, but how such purity was achieved without modern technology. The pillar consists of nearly 98% wrought iron, with almost no slag impurities, a level of refinement Europe wouldn't match until the Industrial Revolution. Ancient Indian smiths likely used a technique called forge welding, repeatedly heating and hammering the iron to squeeze out imperfections. Some theories suggest they mixed organic materials like wood or leaves into the smelting process, creating chemical conditions that enhanced its durability. The pillar's existence forces us to reconsider the technological capabilities of ancient India. While contemporary civilizations like Rome mass-produced iron tools prone to rust, Indian metalworkers crafted a material so advanced it rivals modern stainless steel. Historians speculate this knowledge might have stemmed from early experiments with iron ores from the Ganges Plain, which naturally contain higher phosphorus levels. Yet no other artifacts from the era match the pillar's perfection, suggesting its creation was either accidental or part of a lost specialized technique. One compelling hypothesis involves the pillar's original purpose. Though now a tourist attraction, it may have served as a monumental standard for astronomical observations. Its rust resistance could have been intentional, a way to ensure it endured as a precise celestial marker. Alternatively, some believe it was a tribute to metallurgical mastery, meant to showcase Gupta-era innovation. Modern attempts to replicate the pillar's properties have yielded mixed results. While scientists can create similar anti-corrosive iron in labs, scaling it to the pillar's size remains impractical. The process requires precise control over phosphorus levels. Too little, and the protective layer doesn't form; too much, and the metal becomes brittle. This delicate balance hints at an understanding of metallurgy far ahead of its time. The iron pillar isn't just a relic, it's a challenge to our assumptions about ancient technological progress. In an age where rust claimed swords and tools within years, Indian artisans produced a material that outlasted empires. As we move forward, prepare to encounter another ancient enigma, this time from the shores of the Mediterranean, where a legendary inventor allegedly harnessed the sun itself as a weapon, the notorious Death Ray of Archimedes. Leaving behind the silent marvel of the Iron Pillar, we turn now to a weapon that seems plucked straight from myth, the Death Ray of Archimedes. This legendary device, attributed to the brilliant Greek inventor, supposedly harnessed the power of sunlight to incinerate enemy fleets. But was it a stroke of ancient genius or just a tale exaggerated by time? The story originates from the siege of Syracuse in the year 212 before the Common Era, when Roman forces under General Marcellus attempted to conquer the strategic Sicilian city. According to ancient historians like Lucian and Galen, Archimedes designed a terrifying array of mirrors. or perhaps highly polished bronze shields arranged to focus sunlight into a searing beam. As Roman ships approached, this burning glass allegedly ignited their wooden hulls, forcing the fleet into retreat. The accounts paint a dramatic picture, but historians have debated their credibility for centuries. Modern scientists have put the death ray to the test with mixed results. In the year 1973, Greek engineer Ioannis Sakas conducted one of the first large-scale experiments, using 70 copper-coated mirrors to focus sunlight on a wooden mock-up of a Roman galley. The trial succeeded in setting the target aflame, but only after several minutes of perfect alignment, a luxury unlikely in the chaos of battle. Skeptics argue that ancient mirrors lack the precision to maintain such a concentrated beam, especially against moving ships. Yet alternative theories suggest the death ray might not have been a single device, but part of a broader arsenal. Archimedes was known for his ingenious war machines, including catapults and grappling cranes. Some scholars propose that his mirrors were used to dazzle or disorient sailors, making them easier targets for conventional weapons. Others believe the story conflates multiple innovations, with the burning effect possibly coming from incendiary projectiles launched by his other contraptions. The legend's persistence hints at deeper truths about ancient technological ambition. Even if the death ray wasn't a literal flamethrower, it reflects Archimedes' reputation for pushing boundaries. His work on optics and geometry, such as calculating pi and designing parabolic mirrors, proves he understood principles that could theoretically weaponize light. The real mystery isn't just whether the death ray existed, but how close ancient science came to achieving such a feat. Today, the concept lives on in modern directed energy weapons like laser defenses tested by militaries. This parallel invites a provocative question. Did Archimedes glimpse a future others couldn't imagine? Whether myth or reality, his death ray endures as a symbol of innovation's double edger, a reminder that brilliance can inspire both awe and destruction. Now prepare to shift from the shores of Syracuse to the battlefields of Korea, where another ancient weapon defied expectations. The Hwacha, a fearsome rocket launcher, unleashed storms of arrows with terrifying precision, rewriting the rules of warfare centuries before gunpowder dominated the battlefield. Stepping away from the realm of burning mirrors and ancient optics, we journey now to the rugged landscapes of 16th century Korea, where a different kind of firepower reshaped the battlefield. The Hwacha, a revolutionary artillery piece, stands as one of history's most ingenious pre-gunpowder weapons, a device so advanced it feels almost out of place in its era. Picture this, a wooden cart loaded with dozens of rocket-propelled arrows, each capable of striking targets hundreds of meters away with terrifying precision. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a game-changer. The Hwacha's legend was forged during the Imjin War of the 1590s, when Japan, under Toyotomi Hideyoshi, launched a massive invasion of Korea. Outnumbered and outgunned, Korean forces turned to innovation. The Hwacha, developed by military scientist Cho-Museon, became their secret weapon. Unlike traditional single-shot cannons, this mobile launcher could unleash volleys of up to 200 fire arrows in seconds, raining destruction on tightly packed enemy formations. Historical accounts describe Japanese soldiers frozen in horror as the sky darkened with incoming projectiles, their armor and morale shattered in moments. But what made the Hwacha so groundbreaking? Its design married simplicity with deadly efficiency. The launcher's frame held rows of gunpowder-packed tubes, each loaded with an arrow tipped in iron or explosives. When ignited, the rockets shot forward with enough force to pierce bamboo shields and even light fortifications. Unlike European cannons of the time, which required lengthy reloading, the Hwacha's modular system allowed crews to quickly replace spent racks, maintaining relentless barrages. Some variants, like the Singaijan, could even fire arrows with timed fuses, exploding mid-air to maximize chaos. Modern engineers marvel at the Hwacha's ballistic ingenuity. Its rockets stabilized themselves in flight using fins, a concept later adopted in 20th century missile technology. And while contemporaries in Europe relied on cumbersome siege engines, the Koreans mounted their launchers on nimble two-wheeled carts, enabling rapid repositioning. This mobility gave defenders a critical edge during sieges, like the famous Battle of Hingju, where 3,000 Koreans used 48 Hwachas to repel 30,000 Japanese troops. Yet the Hwacha's legacy extends beyond its battlefield triumphs. It represents a pivotal shift in warfare, bridging the gap between medieval archery and modern artillery. Historians note its psychological impact, how the mere sight of these machines forced enemies to scatter, disrupting their formations long before the first arrow struck. And while gunpowder eventually rendered such weapons obsolete, the Hwacha's principles lived on. Today, multiple launch rocket systems like the U.S. M270 owe a subtle debt to this 16th century marvel. As we reflect on the Hwacha's story, one question lingers: how did a kingdom with limited resources outthink a formidable invader? The answer lies in ingenuity under pressure, proof that necessity doesn't just invent. It revolutionizes. Now, let's turn our gaze from the organized chaos of Korean battlefields to the fluid, unpredictable combat of Central Africa, where warriors wielded throwing knives so intricate they doubled as works of art and instruments of war. Shifting from the regimented firepower of the Hwacha, we find ourselves in the dense forests and savannas of Central Africa, where warfare took on a far more fluid and artistic form. Here, warriors wielded throwing knives unlike anything seen elsewhere in the world. Blades so elaborate, they blurred the line between weapon and cultural artifact. These weren't just tools of war, they were masterpieces of metallurgy designed to confuse, terrify, and cut down enemies with deadly elegance. The first thing that strikes you about African throwing knives is their bewildering variety. Unlike the standardized weapons of Europe or Asia, these blades came in dozens of shapes, each tailored to a specific tribe or purpose. Some resembled crescent moons with multiple curved prongs, while others unfolded like metallic wings, their edges honed to razor sharpness. The Mangbetu people of the Congo, for example, crafted knives with 3 or 4 radiating blades, each angled to maximize damage when hurled through the air. Meanwhile, the Zand warriors favored the K-Pinga, a masterpiece of asymmetry, its central blade flanked by hooked appendages designed to snag flesh or shields mid-flight. What made these weapons so effective wasn't just their sharpness, but their sheer unpredictability. Imagine facing a volley of these spinning, twisting blades in battle. Their irregular shapes disrupted airflow, causing them to curve and wobble erratically, making it nearly impossible for opponents to dodge or block. A skilled thrower could launch a K-Pinga over 50 meters, its hooks ensuring it stuck fast to whatever it struck. Spanish explorer Álvaro de Sandoval, witnessing these weapons in action during the 16th century, wrote that they fell upon men like angry wasps, leaving wounds no surgeon could neatly close. But these knives weren't solely instruments of death. They held deep ceremonial significance, often passed down through generations as symbols of status or used in rites of passage. A young Mangbetu man, for instance, might receive his first throwing knife after completing a hunt, its design encoding his family's history. The blades also served as currency in some regions, their value tied to the craftsmanship and reputation of the smith. This duality, both weapon and heirloom, reflects a cultural sophistication often overlooked by outsiders who dismissed African metallurgy as primitive. Modern tests reveal just how advanced these designs were. Aerodynamic studies show that the K-Pinga's uneven weight distribution allowed it to rotate faster than a symmetrical blade, increasing both range and impact force. The multiple cutting edges ensured that no matter how it struck, at least one razor-sharp point would find its mark. And unlike European throwing axes, which required precise edge on hits to penetrate, these knives didn't need perfect alignment to maim or kill. The throwing knife's decline came not from obsolescence but from the arrival of firearms, yet its legacy endures in unexpected places. Special forces today study these weapons for inspiration in unconventional warfare, and their influence can even be seen in modern sporting equipment like the aerodynamic discs used in discus or boomerang competitions. As we marvel at these blades, we're reminded that innovation in warfare isn't always about sheer power. Sometimes it's about artistry, unpredictability, and a deep understanding of physics, qualities Central African smiths mastered centuries ago. Now, let's travel from the swirling dances of these lethal blades to the dense jungles of Mesoamerica, where the Mayans turned a simple hunting tool into a weapon that could strike with the force of a bullet, leaving behind the swirling chaos of African throwing knives. We now step into the shadow of towering Mesoamerican pyramids, where the Mayans turned physics into a weapon of terrifying efficiency, the Atlatl. This unassuming wooden lever may not look like much at first glance, but in skilled hands, it transformed a simple spear into a missile capable of piercing armor, bringing down large game, and raining death on battlefields centuries before similar technology appeared elsewhere. The genius of the Atlatl lies in its deceptive simplicity. Picture a narrow wooden board, roughly the length of a forearm, with a hooked end to cradle the base of a dart or spear. By extending the thrower's arm like a natural lever, it added extra acceleration just as the projectile was released. The result, spears that could fly over 100 meters, more than twice the range of a hand-thrown javelin, with enough force to impale a jaguar or puncture Spanish conquistador armor. Modern tests show Atlatl darts impacting with the kinetic energy of a bullet from a small caliber gun, explaining why skeletons from ancient battle sites often show ribs shattered by these projectiles. What set the Mayan Atlatl apart wasn't just its mechanics, but its adaptability. Hunters used lightweight versions with poison-tipped darts to silently take down birds and monkeys in dense rainforest canopies, while warriors wielded heavier models with barbed war darts designed to snap off inside wounds. Some Atlatls doubled as close combat clubs, their edges studded with obsidian flakes, making them as versatile as a Swiss army knife of the ancient world. The Aztecs later refined the design further, adding finger loops for better control, a feature archaeologists now recognize as the precursor to modern wrist rocket slingshots. European contemporaries during the same era were still relying on hand-thrown spears, which paled in comparison. While Roman pilums were effective at shorter ranges, they couldn't match the Atlatl's combination of distance, accuracy, and sheer stopping power. Spanish chroniclers wrote with horrified admiration about how Mayan warriors could launch a volley of darts that would fly like angry spirits before their muskets could even reload. But the Atlatl wasn't just a tool of war. Mayan art shows rulers using ceremonial versions during religious rites, their dart throwing symbolizing the sun god hurling lightning. Some Atlatls were even buried with elite warriors, their surfaces carved with intricate glyphs believed to guide the owner's spears in the afterlife. This blend of function and spirituality highlights how the Mayans saw technology as an extension of both human capability and divine will. Though eclipsed by the bow and arrow in later centuries, the Atlatl's legacy persists. Special Forces units have studied its principles for silent, low-tech ambushes, and competitive Atlatl throwing has surged as a modern sport. NASA even researched its mechanics for potential microgravity tools during the Apollo program. As we examine this ancient lever, we're reminded that sometimes the most revolutionary weapons aren't about raw materials, but about reimagining how force is applied. Next, we'll encounter a weapon where artistry and lethality coiled together like a serpent, the Japanese kusarigama. Now we turn from the physics-defying precision of the Mayan Atlatl to a weapon that turned everyday tools into instruments of stealth and terror, the Japanese kusarigama. Imagine a farmer's sickle, but with a grim twist. Chained to its handle is a heavy iron weight, swinging like a pendulum of death. This deceptively simple combination made the kusarigama one of history's most versatile close combat weapons, equally deadly in the hands of ninjas sneaking through castle corridors or peasants defending their villages. What made the kusarigama so fearsome was its hybrid design. The curved blade, adapted from rice harvesters, could hook limbs or slash tendons with surgical precision. Meanwhile, the chain, often several feet long, allowed users to entangle opponents' weapons or limbs before moving in for the kill. Historical manuals depict fighters whirling the weighted end to disorient enemies, then yanking them off balance with the chain, leaving them vulnerable to the sickle's razor edge. In tight spaces where swords became unwieldy, the kusarigama's compact lethality gave wielders a brutal advantage. Ninjas favored this weapon for its adaptability. Unlike the samurai's honor-bound katana, the kusarigama was pragmatic, perfect for ambushes or escapes. A ninja could trip pursuers by snaring their ankles with the chain, scale walls using the sickle as a grappling hook, or even silently strangle sentries by looping the chain around their throats. Some accounts describe ninjas dipping the sickle's tip in poison, ensuring even a glancing cut meant a slow, agonizing death. Farmers, too, mastered the weapon, turning agricultural tools into a means of revolt during periods of oppression. The kusarigama's engineering was as clever as its tactics. The chain's length could be adjusted mid-fight, shortened for precise strikes, or extended to keep foes at bay. Handles were often hollow, sometimes hiding secondary blades or blinding powders. And unlike European flails, which relied on brute force, the kusarigama's elegance lay in its economy of motion. A flick of the wrist could send the weight cracking into a skull, while a subtle tug might disarm a swordsman. But mastering the kusarigama demanded years of training. Practitioners drilled endlessly to avoid the weapon's greatest danger, its chain rebounding on the user. Historical scrolls show gruesome illustrations of untrained warriors tangling themselves in their own chains, a fate as lethal as any enemy's strike. This complexity limited its widespread use, making it a specialist's tool rather than a battlefield staple. Beyond combat, the kusarigama held symbolic power. In Japanese folklore, it was associated with the Tengu, mythical bird demons who taught martial arts to humans. Some legends claim these creatures gifted the first kusarigama to a warrior monk, weaving magic into its chain. Even today, the weapon appears in modern martial arts demonstrations, where masters showcase its mesmerizing, dance-like forms, a reminder that even the most brutal tools can become art. From the shadows of feudal Japan to modern dojos, the kusarigama endures as a testament to ingenuity. Where other weapons relied on sheer force, this chain and sickle combo proved that strategy and adaptability could outweigh raw power. Next, we'll witness how ancient warfare scaled up literally with the towering terror of Persian war elephants. Leaving behind the shadowy precision of the kusarigama, we step onto the sun-baked battlefields of antiquity, where war wasn't just fought, it was towering, thunderous, and draped in armor. The Persian war elephant wasn't merely a weapon. It was a moving fortress, a psychological sledgehammer that could shatter enemy lines before combat even began. Picture this, a 12-foot-tall beast, its hide clad in interlocking plates of bronze and iron, its tusks tipped with razor-sharp metal spikes, and a howdah, a fortified turret strapped to its back, bristling with archers and spearmen. This was nature's tank, a fusion of brute force and meticulous craftsmanship designed to dominate the ancient battlefield. The armor itself was a marvel of engineering. Persian artisans tailored each set to the elephant's massive frame, using boiled leather reinforced with metal scales, a design that balanced protection with mobility. Historical accounts describe how the leather was cured in oils to resist fire arrows, while the metal plating around the head and chest could deflect javelins and sword strikes. Some armor even featured hinged flaps to protect the elephant's vulnerable legs and belly, a detail that highlights the sophistication of these ancient war machines. But the real terror came from the elephant's sheer presence. The ground shook under their weight, their trumpeting sounded like war horns of the gods, and their scent alone could send horses, and the soldiers riding them, into panicked flight. Yet these living weapons weren't invincible. Their greatest strength, their size, also made them vulnerable. Skilled enemies exploited their fear of fire and loud noises, using flaming projectiles or deafening drumbeats to spook them into stampeding back through their own ranks. The Battle of Gaugamela in 331 B.C. exposed this flaw when Alexander the Great's forces routed Persian elephants by exploiting their panic, turning them into instruments of their own army's destruction. Over time, the logistical nightmare of feeding and transporting elephants, combined with their unpredictability, led to their decline. By the medieval era, they'd faded from most battlefields, though their legend endured in art and chronicles as symbols of imperial might. Beyond warfare, these armored giants held cultural significance. Persian kings used them in parades to awe subjects and ambassadors, their hides glittering with gilded ornaments and dyed fabrics. The elephants' handlers, often dressed in matching armor, were revered as elite warriors, their bond with the animals honed through years of training. It's a reminder that these creatures weren't just tools of war, they were partners, their loyalty as carefully cultivated as their battle tactics. The Persian war elephant remains one of history's most awe-inspiring weapons, a testament to humanity's ability to harness nature's raw power. But like so many ancient innovations, its brilliance was matched by its fragility. Next, we'll uncover a weapon that carved its legacy not through size, but through symbolism and savage elegance: the Egyptian khopesh. Stepping from the thunder of war elephants to the silent authority of the Nile's golden sands, we encounter a weapon that was as much a symbol as it was a blade: the Egyptian khopesh. Unlike the towering beasts of Persia, this sickle-shaped sword wielded its power through elegance and terror in equal measure. Originally adapted from agricultural sickles used to harvest crops, the khopesh evolved into one of the ancient world's most distinctive weapons, its curved blade designed to hook, slash, and crush with devastating efficiency. The khopesh wasn't just a tool of war, it was a statement, crafted from bronze and later iron. Its unique shape, part axe, part sword, allowed warriors to exploit its weight distribution for brutal downward strikes capable of splitting shields and bone alike. Historical reliefs show Egyptian soldiers gripping the khopesh with both hands, its curved tip perfect for disarming opponents or yanking them off balance. But perhaps its most fearsome feature was the inner edge, sharpened to a razor's precision, enabling slashing motions that could cleave through flesh with a single swing. Yet the khopesh's significance extended far beyond the battlefield. Pharaohs and high-ranking officials often wielded ornate versions inlaid with gold or lapis lazuli, transforming the weapon into a ceremonial emblem of divine authority. Tomb paintings depict gods like Set and Ra brandishing the khopesh, linking it to cosmic power and the pharaoh's role as a living deity. Even in death, elites were buried with these blades, a testament to their enduring role as symbols of both mortal and eternal might. What made the khopesh truly revolutionary was its adaptability. Early versions, dating back to around 2500 BC, were relatively short, but by the New Kingdom, the blade had lengthened, enhancing its reach and lethality. Archaeologists have uncovered khopeshes in the tombs of Tutankhamun and Ramses II, their designs reflecting regional variations, some with pronounced curves for hooking, others with straighter spines for chopping. This evolution mirrors Egypt's military innovations, from the Hyksos invasions to the empire's expansion into Nubia and the Levant. Despite its dominance, the khopesh eventually faded as iron weapons and straight swords like the Greek xiphos gained prominence. But its legacy endured. The curved silhouette influenced later blades, from the Persian kopis to the medieval falchion, proving that even in obsolescence, the khopesh's design remained timeless. From the hands of farmers to the grasp of gods, this weapon carved its place in history not just through force, but through its inseparable bond with Egyptian identity. Next, we journey north to the fjords and forests of the Vikings, where another iconic weapon, the Norse bearded axe, waits to reveal its secrets. Leaving behind the sun-baked sands of Egypt, we now find ourselves in the mist-shrouded world of the Vikings, where the skeggurks, better known as the bearded axe, reigned supreme. Unlike the kopish's ceremonial grandeur, this weapon was a rugged workhorse of warfare, its brutal simplicity hiding deadly ingenuity. The bearded axe earned its name from the distinctively elongated lower blade that resembled a beard, a design that transformed it into one of the most versatile tools of the Viking Age. That extended lower edge wasn't just for show. It allowed warriors to hook shields or weapons, yanking them aside to create openings for fatal strikes. The upper blade, broad and sharply curved, delivered cleaving blows capable of splitting helmets and bone with terrifying ease. But what truly set this axe apart was its balance, lighter than a sword yet heavier than a hatchet, making it swift enough for one-handed combat but powerful enough to crush through defenses. Raiders cherished the bearded axe for its adaptability. On longships, its compact size made it ideal for close-quarters boarding actions where every swing needed to count. Archaeologists have found axes with wear patterns suggesting they were used not just for battle but for chopping wood or even butchering game, proving its value as a survival tool during extended expeditions. Yet in skilled hands, it became something far deadlier. Sagas describe warriors like Egil Skallagrimsson wielding axes to carve through enemy lines, their strikes precise enough to disarm or maim without losing momentum. But the skeggurks wasn't just a weapon of brute force. Many were adorned with intricate carvings, serpents, runes, or scenes from Norse myths, etched into the haft or blade. These weren't mere decorations, they served as talismans, invoking the protection of gods like Odin or Thor. Some axes bore the owner's name, transforming them into heirlooms passed down generations. The famed Mammon axe, recovered from a Danish chieftain's grave, features silver inlays of interlacing beasts, a testament to how Vikings merged artistry with lethality. The axe's influence stretched far beyond Scandinavia. Norman invaders carried adapted versions into England, where its hooking technique inspired later polearms like the halberd. Even the iconic Francisca throwing axe, used by Frankish warriors, borrowed elements from its Norse cousin. By the High Middle Ages, the bearded axe's DNA could be seen in weapons across Europe, a quiet legacy of Viking innovation. What makes this weapon baffling to historians is its paradoxical nature. A tool of farmers and carpenters that became synonymous with raiders and kings. Unlike the kopish, which faded into history, the bearded axe never truly vanished. Its spirit lives on in modern forestry tools and even tactical tomahawks, proving that the Vikings didn't just wield a weapon, they perfected a design for the ages. Now we turn from the frozen north to the fires of ancient China, where another revolutionary weapon, the fire lance, was about to change warfare forever. Crossing from the rugged battlefields of the Vikings to the innovation-fueled dynasties of China, we encounter a weapon so ahead of its time, it literally sparked the age of gunpowder warfare. The fire lance, emerging in the 10th century, wasn't just another ancient armament. It was humanity's first glimpse into the terrifying potential of firearms, a leap in technology that would forever alter the course of combat. At its core, the fire lance was deceptively simple. Early versions were little more than bamboo tubes packed with gunpowder and shrapnel, sharpened bamboo splinters, pottery shards, or even small stones attached to a spear or pole. When ignited, it unleashed a sudden burst of flame and projectiles, effective up to several meters away. Imagine the shock of facing this in battle. One moment, an enemy soldier charges at you with what looks like an ordinary spear. The next, a roaring jet of fire and debris explodes toward you. The psychological impact alone could scatter entire formations, a tactic the Song dynasty armies exploited masterfully during their wars against the Jin and Mongols. But the fire lance wasn't just a terror weapon. Over the next 2 centuries, Chinese metallurgists refined it into something far deadlier. Bamboo gave way to cast bronze or iron barrels capable of withstanding higher pressure explosions. By the 12th century, some versions fired specialized pellets or poison-coated darts, while others evolved into multi-barrel designs, early ancestors of the machine gun. The heaven-shaking thunder cannon, a later variant, could launch clusters of iron spikes in a single blast, clearing trenches and palisades with gruesome efficiency. What fascinates historians is how the fire lance straddled 2 worlds. It retained the melee utility of a polearm, allowing soldiers to stab and parry, while its projectile function hinted at the future of warfare. This duality made it a staple of siege and naval combat, where confined spaces amplified its lethality. Accounts from the Battle of Tangdao in 1161 describe Song sailors using fire lances to torch Mongol ships, their flames reflected in the water like a scene from some ancient nightmare. Yet the fire lance's true legacy lies in its influence. By the 13th century, knowledge of gunpowder weapons spread westward via the Silk Road, inspiring early cannons in Europe and the Middle East. Without this humble bamboo tube, innovations like the arquebus or the musket might have taken centuries longer to emerge. Even today, the principles behind the fire lance, combining combustion and propulsion, echo in everything from flamethrowers to rocket launchers. The irony, for all its world-changing impact, the fire lance remained uniquely Chinese. While Europe raced to develop handheld firearms, China gradually abandoned the design in favor of rockets and cannons. Yet in those fleeting centuries, this unassuming weapon did something extraordinary. It turned the chaos of gunpowder into a controlled weapon, proving that even the most primal force, fire itself, could be harnessed, directed, and weaponized. Now, as the smoke clears from this revolutionary invention, we journey to the towering Andes, where the Inca Empire turned simple slings into instruments of astonishing precision and power. Leaving behind the roar of gunpowder, we now step into the rugged highlands of the Andes, where the Inca Empire mastered a weapon so deceptively simple yet devastatingly effective: the sling. Far from being a mere tool for shepherds, these slings transformed smooth river stones into lethal projectiles, capable of shattering Spanish steel and reshaping the dynamics of ancient warfare. What made the Inca sling extraordinary wasn't just its design, but the sheer physics behind it. Woven from sturdy llama or alpaca wool, these slings could measure over 5 feet in length, allowing warriors to whirl them with terrifying momentum. When released, a well-aimed stone could reach speeds upwards of 100 miles per hour, comparable to a modern-day baseball pitch, but with far deadlier intent. Spanish chroniclers recounted how these stones could dent helmets, break bones, and even kill horses with a single strike. The conquistador Pedro de Cieza de Leon wrote of Inca slingers hitting targets with such force that they seemed like thunderbolts, a testament to their precision and power. But the true genius lay in the ammunition. The Inca didn't rely on ordinary rocks. They meticulously selected smooth, rounded stones from riverbeds often the size of a fist, ensuring consistent aerodynamics. Some projectiles were even carved into egg-like shapes to minimize air resistance. In siege warfare, they used heated stones to set enemy fortifications ablaze, while in open combat, volleys of stones rained down like hailstorms, disrupting cavalry charges and infantry lines alike. The geology of the Andes played a role too. Volcanic rocks like basalt were prized for their density, making them even more destructive upon impact. The sling's versatility made it a cornerstone of Inca military strategy. Unlike European crossbows or early firearms, it required no expensive materials or complex maintenance. Every boy in the empire trained with slings from childhood, honing accuracy through hunting and ritual games. By adulthood, elite slingers could hit targets at over 200 yards, a range that rivaled many contemporary ranged weapons. During the siege of Cusco in 1536, Inca rebels used slings to pick off Spanish soldiers from cliffs and rooftops, turning the city's narrow streets into deadly kill zones. Yet the sling's legacy extends beyond its battlefield prowess. It symbolized the Incas' intimate understanding of their environment, transforming natural resources into instruments of war. Even after the Spanish introduced firearms, slings remained in use for centuries, a silent rebellion against colonial technology. Today, modern scientists marvel at their efficiency. Studies show a trained slinger can deliver kinetic energy comparable to a bullet, all without a single ounce of gunpowder. As we marvel at this blend of simplicity and lethality, we're reminded that sometimes the most unassuming weapons leave the deepest scars. Now, let's turn our gaze to another battlefield innovation, one that didn't rely on blades or bullets but on the scorched earth itself. Sometimes the deadliest weapon isn't forged from metal but from sheer desperation and strategic cunning. As we leave behind the thunder of Inca slings, we enter the misty battlefields of ancient Europe, where the Celts waged war not just with swords but with fire and famine. This was scorched earth, a tactic so ruthless it blurred the line between warfare and survival. Picture this: the Roman legions, famed for their discipline and supply lines, marching deep into Celtic territories, only to find smoldering fields and poisoned wells. The Celts, outmatched in open battle, turned their homeland itself into a weapon. By burning their own crops and destroying vital resources, they denied the invaders food, shelter, and clean water. It wasn't just sabotage, it was a calculated act of defiance, a way to starve Rome's war machine into retreat. Historical accounts describe entire landscapes reduced to wastelands, with tribes like the Gauls and Britons preferring ashes over surrender. What made this strategy revolutionary was its psychological toll. Roman soldiers, accustomed to seizing enemy granaries to feed their armies, suddenly faced barren lands and dwindling supplies. The historian Julius Caesar himself wrote of the Helvetii tribe burning their own villages during their migration, leaving nothing for pursuing forces. But the most famous example came during Rome's invasion of Britain in 54 BCE. When the Celtic chieftain Cassivellaunus realized he couldn't defeat Caesar's legions outright, he ordered his people to torch their farms and hide in forests. The Romans, deprived of plunder, found themselves bogged down in a war of attrition. This wasn't mere destruction, it was early, total war, targeting civilians and infrastructure long before the term existed. The Celts understood that victory didn't always require winning battles. Sometimes it meant making the land itself inhospitable to the enemy. Even Rome's superior engineering couldn't compensate for starvation or disease. In some cases, the tactic backfired, pushing Celtic refugees into Roman-controlled lands. But more often, it forced invaders to reconsider the cost of conquest. The legacy of scorched earth endures in modern warfare, from Russia's defense against Napoleon to guerrilla campaigns in the 20th century. Yet its origins lie in these ancient tribal struggles where the Celts turned their greatest weakness, their lack of centralized armies, into a strength. By weaponizing the land, they proved that sometimes the most powerful force isn't a blade or a bullet, but the will to sacrifice everything rather than yield. Now, let's shift from the ashes of battlefields to an even more enigmatic weapon, one that straddles the line between myth and science, as we explore the haunting theory of Tibetan singing bowls as sonic arms. Now we step from the brutal tactics of scorched earth into the realm of sound where vibrations, not flames, might have once been used as weapons. The Tibetan singing bowl, a sacred object revered for its meditative tones, hides a controversial theory. Could these ancient artifacts have doubled as sonic arms? Picture a battlefield shrouded in mist where monks kneel not in prayer but in preparation for combat. According to fringe historians, certain Tibetan bowls, when struck or rubbed, emitted frequencies so piercing they could disorient enemies. The idea isn't entirely far-fetched. modern science confirms that sound waves at specific frequencies can induce dizziness, nausea, or even temporary paralysis. But is there any real evidence linking these bowls to warfare? Let's separate myth from reality. Traditionally, singing bowls were, and still are, used in Buddhist rituals. Crafted from a blend of metals, they produce resonant tones believed to promote healing and mindfulness. Their vibrations sync with brain waves, easing stress during meditation. Archaeologists have unearthed bowls dating back to the 12th century, but none bear inscriptions or damage suggesting martial use. Even their design prioritizes harmony over harm. The deeper the bowl, the mellower the tone. Yet the sonic weapon theory persists, fueled by tantalizing clues. Some bowls, particularly those from the Himalayas, emit frequencies between 110 and 115 Hz, a range known to disrupt human balance. Legends speak of monks using sound shields to repel invaders, though these accounts blur into folklore. Skeptics argue that even if bowls could produce disorienting sounds, their volume wouldn't carry far enough to affect entire armies without modern amplification. Modern experiments add intrigue. In 2008, a team at MIT demonstrated how low-frequency sound could vibrate internal organs, validating the concept of acoustic weapons. But replicating this with ancient bowls yielded mixed results. While some tones caused mild discomfort, none matched the debilitating effects described in myths. So where does that leave us? The singing bowl's primary role was spiritual, not military. Yet the persistence of the theory hints at a deeper truth. Ancient cultures understood sound's power long before science could explain it. Whether as tools for peace or hypothetical arms, these bowls remind us that sometimes the most potent weapons aren't wielded with force but with resonance. Next, we turn to a weapon with undeniable physical impact as we examine the Maori potu, a sleek, ruthless club designed for precision strikes. Moving from the ethereal power of sound to the raw force of bone and stone, we encounter the Maori potu, a weapon as elegant as it is deadly. These short, handheld clubs, often carved from whalebone or greenstone, were more than just tools of war. They were extensions of the warrior's spirit, designed to deliver devastating blows with surgical precision. Imagine a close-quarters fight where every strike could mean life or death. The potu's design was brutally efficient, a smooth, flattened surface tapered to a sharp edge, perfect for slashing or crushing. Unlike heavier clubs, its lightweight construction allowed lightning-fast strikes, targeting vital points like the temple, ribs, or spine. Warriors trained for years to master its use, weaving intricate footwork with swift, calculated swings. One well-placed hit could incapacitate an opponent instantly, no second chances. But the potu's significance went beyond combat. In Maori culture, weapons were imbued with mana or spiritual power. Crafted with sacred rituals, each potu bore the essence of its creator and the ancestors who guided their hands. Some were even named like living beings, passed down through generations as revered heirlooms. To wield one was to carry the weight of history and honor. The materials themselves told a story. Whalebone potu or potu paraoa symbolized strength and prestige reserved for chiefs. Greenstone versions, known as mere paunamu, were even more prized, their jade-like surface shimmering with an almost otherworldly glow. These weren't just weapons, they were status symbols used in ceremonial challenges to settle disputes without bloodshed. A warrior might lay his potu at an enemy's feet, offering a chance to surrender with dignity. European settlers witnessed the potu's lethal potential firsthand. Early accounts describe Maori warriors closing distances in seconds, their strikes so precise they could split helmets or crack skulls. Despite the introduction of muskets, many warriors clung to their potu, trusting its reliability over finicky firearms. Even today, these weapons remain potent symbols of Maori identity, featured in dances, art, and rites of passage. What makes the potu truly remarkable is its duality. a tool for both destruction and connection, as much about identity as it was about survival. It reminds us that the finest weapons aren't just forged in fire, but in the values of those who wield them. And now we set sail for the Mediterranean, where fire and ingenuity collided in one of history's most feared naval weapons. Now let's turn our attention to the open waters of the ancient Mediterranean, where desperation and ingenuity birthed one of naval warfare's most terrifying spectacles, the Carthaginian fire ships. Picture this: under the cover of darkness, unmanned vessels, their decks stacked with flammable pitch and dry timber, drift silently toward an enemy fleet. Then, in a flash, they erupt into towering infernos, swallowing entire warships in minutes. This wasn't just arson on water, it was psychological warfare at its most brutal. Hannibal, Carthage's legendary general, is often credited with deploying these floating weapons during the Punic Wars, though historical records remain tantalizingly sparse. What we do know is that fire ships exploited two primal fears, fire and chaos. Unlike traditional naval battles where strength and strategy decided outcomes, these burning hulks turned the sea itself into an unpredictable battlefield. Romans, masters of disciplined formations, found their rigid lines useless against an enemy that didn't even need sailors to strike. The genius of the fire ship lay in its simplicity. Old or damaged vessels, no longer fit for combat, were loaded with combustibles, oil-soaked rags, barrels of tar, even sulfur for extra fury. With sails set and rudders lashed, they were set adrift toward enemy fleets at anchor. Some accounts suggest crews lit them just before abandoning ship, while others hint at delayed fuses, allowing the fire to ignite mid-course. Either way, the result was the same: a wall of flame barreling toward terrified crews who had mere moments to cut anchors and flee. But the true terror wasn't just the flames, it was the domino effect. In the tight quarters of a naval blockade, one burning ship could ignite a dozen others, turning a disciplined armada into a frantic scramble for survival. The Romans, who prided themselves on engineering marvels, had no counter for this primal weapon. Fire ships didn't just destroy vessels, they shattered morale. Imagine the horror of watching your allies' ships vanish in smoke, knowing your own might be next. What's striking is how these ancient missiles foreshadowed modern warfare. Like today's drone strikes, fire ships removed the attacker from immediate danger, trading manpower for sheer destructive potential. Carthage, outmatched in sheer naval power, leveraged creativity to level the playing field. And while historians debate how often they were actually used, their legend persisted precisely because they represented the ultimate asymmetric weapon: cheap to make, devastating in impact, and impossible to fully defend against. Even the aftermath played into Carthage's hands. Survivors spread tales of the horror, making future enemies hesitate before engaging. In war, perception can be as potent as steel. The fire ship wasn't just a tool, it was a message against ingenuity even the mightiest fleet could burn. As we close this chapter on ancient marvels, remember, the most fearsome weapons weren't always the sharpest or the strongest. Sometimes they were simply the ones that turned the rules of war to ash. Now, as we reach the end of our journey through these 20 astonishing weapons, it's impossible not to be struck by the sheer brilliance and mystery behind each one. From the Viking Ulfberht Swords forged with metallurgy that defied their era, to the terrifying Greek fire that burned even on water, and the Aztec Macuahuitl that could cleave through steel as easily as flesh. These weren't just tools of war, they were masterpieces of innovation, born from minds that saw possibilities far beyond their time. Consider the Damascus Steel blades, their wavy patterns hiding secrets modern blacksmiths still struggle to replicate. Or the Hwacha, Korea's rocket launcher that turned the tide of battle centuries before such technology became commonplace. And who could forget the Carthaginian fire ships turning the sea itself into a weapon? Each of these artifacts forces us to ask a haunting question. Were ancient civilizations more advanced than we've given them credit for, or did critical knowledge vanish in the ashes of history? Perhaps the most fascinating thread tying these weapons together is their simplicity. The Mayan atlatl, a humble lever that multiplied the power of a spear throw. The Maori patu, a stone club designed with lethal precision. They didn't always rely on complexity, just ingenious applications of physics, chemistry, and psychology. That's what makes them timeless, but here's the real mystery. If so many of these techniques were lost, like the formula for Greek fire or the exact process behind Damascus steel, what else might have slipped through the cracks? Could there have been even more revolutionary weapons that didn't survive the march of time? The fact that we're still piecing together their secrets today speaks volumes. So what do you think? Were these weapons flukes of history or proof of knowledge we've since forgotten? Drop your theories in the comments below. I'd love to hear which of these ancient marvels fascinated you the most. And if you enjoyed unraveling these mysteries with me, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon. There are countless more historical puzzles waiting to be explored, and I'll be diving into them very soon. Until then, keep questioning, keep wondering, and remember, sometimes the past holds innovations that still leave us searching for answers. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through the weapons that shouldn't have existed. History is never just about the past, it's about the questions that keep us looking forward. See you in the next adventure.